Have you ever been told that quantum physics is just too hard to understand? Well, that's the first sign that someone's hiding something from you. And no, this isn't some conspiracy theory. It's plain reality. The truth is, behind all those numbers and equations lies a universe of strange, provocative, and even spiritual ideas that many experts prefer not to talk about. Why? Because some of these ideas shake the foundations of everything. Your perception of reality, your conscious mind, the role of consciousness in the universe, and even the possibility that you might be living inside a very well-crafted illusion. While some people tell you to just do the math and don't think too much, others, quietly, admit, we still don't really know what's real. And that's where you come in. Yes, you, because maybe no one has ever told you that there's an invisible bridge connecting the discoveries of quantum physics with your own spiritual awakening. A bridge that redefines what matter is, what time is, and what you are in this vast cosmic stage. Get ready. What you're about to discover might turn your mind upside down. And maybe, for the first time, you'll realize you're not here just to observe reality, but to create it. You know that feeling that the world is stranger than it seems? Well, in quantum physics, that's not just a feeling, it's practically a rule. The so-called wave function, that fancy technical term, describes the state of everything that exists on a microscopic level. But instead of imagining a tiny particle floating in space, think of it as a mix of possibilities. Like when you haven't yet decided whether to order pizza or a salad. Everything happens at once until someone, or something, looks. And then poof, reality picks one option. But wait, who said you were the one choosing? That's where the famous idea of superposition comes in. The conscious mind, so used to certainties, struggles to accept that an electron can be in two places at the same time. But it can, or maybe it is. Consciousness, in this context, acts like a spotlight on a stage. Wherever it shines, that's what becomes real. And that, of course, throws us straight into the famous measurement problem. Because if no one's observing, what's actually real? Does anything exist out there before we look? Welcome to the puzzle that even the experts don't dare to fully unravel. And here's the wild part. The act of measuring seems to collapse all those possibilities into a single outcome. But no one really knows how or why. Could consciousness itself have that kind of power? Maybe what people call spiritual awakening. The idea that by observing the universe we awaken its very existence isn't mysticism at all. Maybe it's quantum physics, baby. Yet even the most skeptical scientists avoid saying this out loud. They'd rather repeat, "Don't think too much, just calculate." Really? Yes, because a good portion of the physics community prefers to ignore the how and why behind reality. For them, the goal is prediction, like forecasting tomorrow's weather. If it works, great. But behind this so-called practicality hides a deep philosophical mess. The universe might be dancing a waltz of possibilities, and we only see the step we take. But what about the rest of the dance? Is it still happening or did it never exist at all? Imagine you're watching a movie with several possible endings. But unlike the cinema, in quantum physics, all those endings actually happen, just in parallel universes. This is one of the most fascinating and strangest ideas ever proposed, the many worlds interpretation. According to it, every choice causes reality to split. One version of you takes the road on the left, another goes right, and both continue to exist. Sounds like science fiction? Maybe. But there are physicists who swear it's more real than it seems. Meanwhile, the Copenhagen interpretation, the more traditional one, prefers to stay on safer ground. It says the wave function represents what we know about a system, and it collapses when we measure something. But no one clearly defines what it means to measure. Is it a machine? A human eye? Consciousness itself? This blurry point opens a black hole of debate that even experts tend to avoid. After all, if we admit that the universe needs an observer to exist, physics becomes poetry. And many still aren't ready for that kind of spiritual awakening. Then come the hidden ones, the outcasts the theories few talk about, like Bohmian mechanics, which says, relax. Everything has a path. It's just guided by an invisible wave. It sounds comforting, because it gives physics a sense of order that matches what we see in everyday life. But to work, this theory requires non-locality, meaning one part of the universe can instantly affect another, even if they're light years apart. Here, quantum physics starts brushing against the mystical, yet it's still grounded in pure mathematics. And as if that weren't enough, there are the collapse models. In these, the collapse of the wave function isn't a philosophical mystery but a real physical process, with rules, parameters, and even testable predictions. Sounds reasonable, right? But you won't hear much about it in glossy Netflix documentaries. Why? Because accepting this would shake the foundations of modern physics. And let's face it, challenging the status quo is messy, controversial, and uncomfortable. Most people prefer the comfort zone of functional ignorance. In the end, what almost no one tells you is that there's no consensus. Each interpretation leads to a completely different mental universe. And guess what? That changes everything. How we see life, how we think about destiny, choices, and even our own identity. If infinite versions of you exist, then who are you, really? And if the universe doesn't collapse but unfolds endlessly, where does the conscious mind fit into all of this? Well, we haven't even mentioned entanglement yet, and that's where things get really tangled. Have you ever heard of quantum entanglement? It sounds like a complicated relationship, doesn't it? And in a way it is. Imagine two particles that, once connected, continue to feel each other even if separated by galaxies. Whatever happens to one instantly affects the other. And no, this isn't magic, it's quantum physics. Einstein found it so absurd he called it spooky action at a distance, but experiments keep proving it's real. And when that sinks in, everything we thought we knew about space, time, and separation starts collapsing, like a house of cards. Another mind-bending concept is superposition. Imagine a cat that's both alive and dead at the same time. Sounds crazy, right? That was the famous thought experiment from Schrödinger. But this quantum cat is just a metaphor. In reality, microscopic systems, like electrons and photons, exist in that weird in-between state where multiple outcomes coexist until someone observes them. And that brings us back to the age-old question. What does it actually mean to observe? That's where consciousness steps back into the picture. Like a mysterious guest no one invited, but everyone keeps talking about. But hold on. There's more. Decoherence. That's the fancy term for why you don't see your breakfast floating around in a quantum state. Decoherence happens when the environment interferes with a quantum system, making all those overlapping possibilities unravel until only one becomes solid, physical reality. It's as if the world around us is constantly spying on the quantum realm, forcing it to behave normally. But what if we could learn to control that process? That would change everything. Maybe even spark a deeper kind of spiritual awakening. And now for the real twist. Is the wave function actually real? Or is it just a clever way to organize our ignorance? This is where the debate between ontology and epistemology begins. If it's real, then superpositions are real, and wave collapses are actual physical events. But if it's only a map of what we know, then maybe all of this is just a reflection of our limited minds. In that case, the conscious mind becomes the filter of reality itself. So what if the universe is more psychological than physical? The real question isn't whether that's possible. It's, why has no one ever told you this before? All of this leads to a powerful question. Do experts avoid certain topics because they lack answers, or because they fear the questions? There's a subtle silence surrounding the deepest issues in quantum physics. Most of the scientific community agrees that the theory works, and that's it. But what does works even mean? It works as a tool, yes, but no one can guarantee that we truly understand the essence of what we call reality. Many avoid going down that path because it opens too many doors, and not everyone is ready to walk through them. Even more intriguing, space and time, the categories we use to organize life, might not be fundamentally real at all. Cutting-edge research in quantum gravity and entanglement networks suggests that these structures could actually emerge from something deeper, as if the universe were a living web of vibration and information. And within this web, the conscious mind might not be an exception to the rule, but an essential part of the whole puzzle. A kind of inner eye observing the very code of reality, maybe even influencing it. Then there's the PBR theorem, which throws even more fuel on the fire. It basically says that the wave function can't just be a reflection of what we know. It has to represent something real. And if it's real, then the universe isn't simply waiting to be observed. It's unfolding into possible states that already exist, even before our perception. It's as if the idea of spiritual awakening, long described by ancient traditions, is now meeting modern physics halfway, and both are saying the same thing, just in different languages. Here's a detail no one tells you. Some collapse models, even when they assume reality has definite states, suggest that we might never be able to access them completely. There's a built-in limit to our capacity to know, and that changes everything. Because in that case, it's not just about measuring. It's about accepting that there are aspects of reality that go beyond what we can see or test, yet are no less real. And if science is now facing the ceiling of its own knowledge, maybe it's time to make room for intuition and conscious perception as legitimate tools. So, what does all of this mean for the real world? In daily life, everything feels solid, doesn't it? But that's because decoherence acts like a stabilizer for our perception. It hides quantum chaos behind a classical appearance. Understanding that changes everything, because if what we see is only a fragment, then reality might be far more flexible, adaptable, and interconnected than we imagine. And the conscious mind? Maybe it's not just an observer of life, but a silent co-author of its own story. Let's be honest. If all of this is true, then the idea of free will takes on a whole new meaning. What if instead of simply choosing paths, you were actually collapsing realities? What if intention, when aligned with focus and presence, was a way of navigating between possibilities? This isn't magic, it's quantum physics. But it's a kind of physics that hasn't made its way into school textbooks yet. It's hidden between the lines of research papers, in behind-the-scenes debates, in conversations no one dares to have publicly. And this isn't cheap philosophy. It's the beginning of a new way of seeing existence, a new ontology, a new lens to understand who we are and what we're doing here. Consciousness might be the master code that gives access to deeper layers of reality, and if that sounds like mysticism, Maybe it's because we're rediscovering what the ancients already knew. Only now, we have equations to back it up. And don't worry, the next steps go even further. Because if you've made it this far, it means you're ready to face reality as it truly is. Complex, paradoxical, and full of possibilities waiting to be chosen. So tell me, after all this, do you still believe reality is only what your eyes can see? Or deep down, do you feel that you've always known there's something more? Maybe consciousness isn't just a product of the brain. Maybe the conscious mind is the most powerful tool in the universe, and quantum physics is only beginning to prove it. Will you keep living on autopilot, believing in the surface version of reality? Or will you take the next step toward your spiritual awakening and start questioning everything you were told is real? Knowledge is out there, but wisdom belongs to those brave enough to apply it. So will you just watch, or will you start living what science is beginning to uncover? If this journey stirred something inside you, share it in the comments. What was the most powerful insight you had? And of course, if you want to keep exploring the depths of reality, the ones few dare to investigate, subscribe to the channel, turn on the notifications, and come with us to explore the universe, inside and out.